Hi, my name is Emma, this is Emma Rose in Books, and I wanted to do a tag for you today because I was tagged a little while ago, maybe not super ages ago, last month, by A Sea of Tomes to do the memory book tag, and this is an original tag that she's done, and I just thought it was really lovely because it associates books with personal memories, which is always a kind of a lovely thing for me to think about, but it also means that you guys can get to know me a little bit better perhaps. Yeah, I like it. It's a nice tag, so let's do it today. Right. Number 1, early years. What's the first book you can remember reading by yourself? Well, I went and found it because I actually have the exact book. I kept hold of a number of books from my childhood and passed them on to my kids, so my daughter now has this. And I actually thought it was a Ladybird book, but it's not. It's a Little Owl Nursery Rhymes, but it's the same kind of size that Ladybird books were, and it was 75p because books used to be super cheap. Well, they weren't super cheap because of inflation, but you know. And I used to read this over and over again. I loved the illustrations in it. I just thought they were really pretty, and I used to read it backwards as well because I was a smart ass. And I have a memory of sitting in bed and reading this to my mum. So yeah, I would have been quite little, but I was always a really good reader. I learned to read very, very young. Mum put a lot of effort into teaching me to read. Both my parents, big book fans. So yeah, it's this one I can remember, and I would have been quite young reading this. 2, school. Discuss a book you had to read for school that you have strong memories about. Like anybody, when I did my exams, I had to have set text, and one of my GCSE ones was Oliver Twist, and I read it quite quickly, that I remember, and then had to sit through like everybody else reading it in class because I'd read it as soon as I got it. I'm not a big Dickens fan. I find his writing style quite hard to get into, and I hadn't massively enjoyed it. I think also because our teacher at no point explained the point of Oliver Twist, of it being that people didn't really care about orphans and that kind of thing. It wasn't seen as a big deal, and it was Dickens making it a very emotional, kind of overly sweet tale so that people would read it and care more about these things going on within society. I think if I'd have understood that, then I would have got a lot more from it. And then we had to contrast it with a book, and gosh, I can't remember what it was called. It was called Stone Cold? Yeah, it was. Wow, I can't believe I remembered that. We had to contrast it with a modern book, and the book that was chosen for us was one called Stone Cold by Robert Swindells, and it's a YA book, and it's the idea of it is highlighting young homeless people, which again I didn't get the point that they were both social commentaries. So I remember in comparing the two, I was like, well, one is a classic and one is a modern book. One is this very dense writing style, and the other is a quite simply written YA book. One is about an homeless but an orphan living in like a workhouse who then goes and has these things, and the other one is about a young person that ends up living on the streets who's old, and I just couldn't see everything was contrast. I couldn't see the parallels, and I just remember just thinking, why is this book being compared to Oliver Twist, even though I didn't like Oliver Twist that much? To me it just seemed like yin and yang. You couldn't, there was no link between two. Obviously I can see that now. And yeah, I just remember being enraged and not seeing the point at all, and this experience of reading these two books at school was just like, which is a lot to be said for good teaching. Right, next question is family. Talk about a book you remember reading with your parents. Okay, well I've already said The Owl and the Pussycat. So, as I've already said, both of my parents were big readers, so I actually read a lot of books with both of them. But this one springs to mind. My son is reading it at the moment, so there's some weird bookmark. What even is that bookmark? Anyway, my mum loved these books because she would have read these when she was growing up. I mean, these first published in 1922. My mum is not was not born in like the 20s. Anyway, she was a fan of these when she was growing up. And I got the series out of the library. I never actually owned them. My mum bought these for my son and he's just starting to get into them. And my mum used to read them to me and she used to do all the voices, particularly Violet Elizabeth Bott. I'd forgotten her name. So Violet Elizabeth Bott, my mum used to do the voice of "I'll squeam and squeam until I'm thick," and I just thought it was hysterical, and everyone had voices in it. And there's this one scene, I can't remember if it's in this particular book of the series, where they do a play and they're pretending to discover America, and the boys are pretending to be America by just lying on the floor, and William is like looking around and looking for them, and I just thought it was the funniest thing in the world. I don't even know why. So I have very strong memories of my mum reading these to me and absolutely loving them. Number 4, Midnight. Talk about a book you remember staying up late to read or finish. I mean, all the books. I used to, because I wasn't allowed to stay up reading, I had this little lamp by the side of my bed, and what I used to do was read with one hand and keep one hand on the switch. And so the second I heard Mum move from downstairs, I'd hit the switch and just be like, yeah, I was never awake. So number 5 is Holiday. Talk about a bookish memory from the holidays. And I think here she's talking about the Christmas holidays, not going on holiday. And I can't think of anything specific that I necessarily read at Christmas, but I have created a tradition now with my kids where I kind of do a Christmas Eve box, but it's not like I don't go all out on it. All I get them is a new pair of pyjamas each, and I get something that matches. So because I've got a boy and 2 girls, I usually get something that's from like a boys range, so that because the girls won't mind wearing something, whereas usually stuff that's from a girls range my son wouldn't be that willing to wear. Or something that's reasonably unisex. Actually this year I think I managed to find like quite a unisex range. But yeah, something where the 3 of them can match, and it's quite tricky because of their ages, because I've got an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old and a 18-month-old. To actually try and find a shop where they have a range that encompasses those ages is quite challenging. But anyway, so I buy them new pyjamas, and then I buy them a new book. And I usually buy them a bath bomb as well, so that on Christmas Eve they can have a nice bath. So it's really nice for them, and they love getting their new book. And to me, it's something, instead of just buying them like toys or whatever, it's a nice opportunity for me to buy a book for them, because a lot of the time either other people buy them for them, or maybe we just pick stuff up at charity shops, or if they ask me for something then I'll get it. But I really like looking for a book for them. So this year I got the Fantastic Beasts for my son, my eldest, because I listened to it on audiobook, and I know that the paperback that was released actually has like scribbles from Harry Potter and stuff on it, so I thought he'd really enjoy it. He was mad into Harry Potter, well still is. So I got him that and he absolutely loved it and has been reading it over and over again, making notes from it. Anyway, and then my daughter, I got her a Julia Donaldson book called Tiddler. She loves Julia Donaldson. She'd been learning a little bit about some Julia Donaldson books at school, and Tiddler has got a page that's got a mermaid in, and she's mad about mermaids, so it kind of ticked all the boxes. She already has a singing mermaid, in case anybody wonders. And then for my littlest, I got her Goodnight Moon, because it was a book that I didn't really know, but when I looked up kind of books that people get for people, I had a lot of the ones that other people were talking about, like The Very Hungry Caterpillar, or I don't know, I just thought that that one would be a really cute one. And she likes it. She's not super into it because she really likes feely books or ones with flaps to lift and kind of interactive books. But I still think she does like it. I think she likes the rhythm of it. So, but yeah, I just think it's really nice. So it's not like an old memory, but kind of creating memories. And I like to think that I'll always buy them books for Christmas Eve. I just think that's just a cute thing to do. I usually buy them secondhand, by the way. Just because I like buying secondhand books. Number 6, Passion. Talk about a book that helped shape you, i.e. career path. By the way, I'm sorry if I'm like really squinty. I lost a contact lens, and I wear my contact lenses are 2 weekly ones. I think what happened was it dropped out into a load of washing I was carrying, because I literally just put them in, I hadn't put it in properly, and then I put it all in the wash because I couldn't find this contact lens anywhere. And I'm kind of punishing myself by not opening any new contact lenses until when I would have opened them. And I tried to film this with my glasses on, but the glare was too annoying, so I'm really sorry if I am like super squinty. Anyway, talk about a book that helped shape you, i.e. your career path or an area you enjoy, etc. Well, I could harp on again about the politics of breastfeeding, but I feel like I've done that to death. So I'm going to talk about another kind of parenting-ish book that had a big impact on me. I actually talk about this in my book, which is called Milk. It's here, it looks like that, and links are in the description. Now, this book, called 3 in a Bed by Deborah Jackson, it's all about sharing a bed with your children, and talking about kind of the anthropological evidence of that is the natural. I mean, if you look at any animal, they generally sleep with their babies. It's the natural thing to do. A child or a baby doesn't understand the concept of you sleep over there and I'll sleep over here kind of thing, and so it's no surprise that for a lot of babies they don't like being alone and they sleep better when they're with you. And when I wasn't super into the idea of sharing a bed with my children, but a friend bought this for me and I read it kind of thinking, I don't know, this isn't my thing. And I read it while I was pregnant, so I kind of read it and went, I don't know, I'm still not convinced. I thought it was nice and all, but I probably wouldn't do it because I wanted my children to sleep separately from me. And then it turned out that my children slept really badly. I was absolutely exhausted. They wouldn't settle. Whereas if I brought them into bed with me, then they slept really well. Well, not really well, but better. And that it allowed me to get more rest because I could just kind of doze. And it meant that we set up our sleeping arrangements so that it was as safe as it could be for sharing a bed with your baby. So for instance, with my youngest, we had one of those like co-sleeping cribs. Not that she actually went in it that much because I'd usually end up with her closer to me, but there definitely is a lot in it. And so this book really shaped me in a couple of ways. First of all, literally as in I would have been exhausted without bringing my kids into bed with me, or I would have ended up bringing them in because I was so shattered and not addressing the fact that I needed to ensure that the space was safe. But also, at the time, I was very into like all the conventional parenting suggestions, and I thought that you had to do those certain things, and so your baby would sleep in a Moses basket, and then you would put them in a cot in another room, and I just reading something that said you don't have to do that, and that made me kind of go, you don't have to have a set parenting method. Everything is flexible and there's more than one way to do things, and it just depends because everybody's different, every situation is different. And so for us, bed sharing really helped us to cope with our children being little. My youngest still comes into bed with us during the night, so she starts in her own cot, but when she wakes up in the night she comes in with us because she gets very restless. And if my children are ill or they're upset or they can't sleep, even if we're not in our bed, they always want to go into our bed. So it's a sure thing if one of the kids is like, I really can't sleep. So do you want to go in mummy and daddy's bed? And they'll go in there and they'll fall asleep and we'll go and take them out. So there is just that thing, that like family bed sort of, it's just that comforting space. So yeah, this book for us made a really big difference with parenting. I say us, my husband never read it, but I read it and relayed the information. Next one, number 7, travel. Discuss a book you read on vacation or a trip that brings up fond memories. Okay, when I was 19, so in the first summer from when I was at university, I went to Greece with some girlfriends. There were 4 of us. We actually split up into different locations, so it ended up with just me and one friend. And we went to do turtle conservation. So we flew into Greece, we went to Athens. We didn't like Athens. We then went to Olympia after I think a day. Spent about a week in Olympia. We loved it there. And then we all went our separate ways, and I went to a place called Calonero, which is near Kyparissia, if you're looking for a... I think I said that right, I don't know. Yeah, me and my friend went there, and we stayed in a shared house with about 8 other people, 6 other people, something like that. And we did things like manning a little shop to tell people about the turtles, spending the night every hour patrolling the beach to check, because this was when the hatchlings were already, when the eggs were already laid, we were waiting for the hatchlings. Going and patrolling and checking on the nests and seeing if any had hatched, because there was a lot of light on the beach, so the turtles would, if they hatched out of their nest, they would go up onto the beach instead of down to the sea. So any nests that were in the lit areas, we would put boxes over them, and then during the night we would go and check each box, and if any had hatched, we would get them out, put them in a bucket, carry them down to the darker end of the beach and release them so that they could safely go down to the water, and we'd sort of watch them go down. And keep an eye out in case a nest had hatched that we hadn't marked, where then the turtles would be everywhere and you'd have to go and try and find them. And we'd also do nest excavations, so once a nest had finished, we would dig up all of the eggs and count how many had hatched and how many had not, and whether any of them, whether there had been any like deformed turtles that hadn't made it out, and that kind of thing. Keep records of how things were going, which nests were successful and that kind of thing. Because they were all marked of where they were and, you know, was it too close to the water, and so they could use it for scientific research. So I was there with my friend for about 5 weeks. Anyway, there's a long-winded way of saying, while we were there was like a shared bookcase, so anybody who'd been coming and staying in this shared house, other areas, like where my other 2 friends went, had camping, but we actually had a house with like bunks. There was a bookshelf with books that people had left over the summer and probably over previous years, I don't know. And we read all sorts of things that were on that bookcase. I mean, I remember reading The Lovely Bones, I remember reading The Life of Pi. I don't know, I read a lot, but one of the ones that is like a real memory for me is Nancy Drew. Now I have a Nancy Drew, but it's not this one. And this is the one I have that I was bought when I was a kid. As you can see, it's like super old. And there was a couple of these, I think even these kind of tripler ones on the bookcase, and one of the girls read it and kind of went, oh my god, this is hilarious, this like Nancy thinks she's so perfect, and I was like, oh well, I've read that before. And then reading it as, you know, an older, as a 19-year-old, as opposed to reading it when you were a child, when I was totally into how amazing a detective Nancy was, reading it as a 19-year-old and kind of going, what's the deal with her? Why does she think she's so perfect? And we all read them and were like reading passages out to each other, and we just thought it was the funniest thing in the world. And we would read these bits of like, oh, of course Nancy was so beautiful and everybody looked at her and thought she was wonderful. And the bits where she kind of finds out bits of crimes because, you know, she's so clever and she's so, I don't know, we just thought it was really funny. So the Nancy Drew books really remind me of that trip to Greece and just sort of sitting on the beach together and reading sections out. Number 8, Hideaway. Discuss one of your favourite places to read and why it's one of your favourites. Probably in the bath. I know lots of people won't like that because of the steam and the pages, and I have dropped books in the bath before. I really like just losing time and just lying in the bath, and I have no idea, and I'll suddenly discover I've been in there for an hour. And it's just the most relaxing thing. Instead of watching videos, I feel like my brain, that doesn't turn my brain off. I don't want to just lie there and stare into space. So yeah, reading for me, reading in the bath is just like a really blissful thing. Other than that, I read when I take the kids places. So if they're at a club, you know, if they're at swimming, I'll just sit and read while they're in there. Or if the kids are playing really nicely and I just sort of let them get on with it and I'll be able to read. But that's not like a favourite place, that's just a convenient place. So yeah, in the bath is probably my favourite. If I read in bed, I fall asleep, so. Okay, number 9, a book that helped you with a big life change. Now I know I've literally not long done a video about this one, but The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, which I thought would come out more easily. There we go. I did a review about it. When I sorted my house out and kind of made my mentality more about keeping things in my life that were important to me and letting go of things that were causing me any kind of anxiety or stress or anything like that. As I said in my review, it extends into your personal life and your outlook on life. It's not just about your possessions. And at the time, I was going through the process of deciding what to do with my books. So when I first read this, it was while I was still pursuing traditional publishing and I was still working and teaching. And then I got to a point where when I decided to self-publish, me and my husband had a big conversation about it. And we both agreed that if I was going to put everything into it that I wanted to and really make as professional a job of it as I wanted to, and bring the book out as quickly as I wanted, not have to kind of just do little bits here and there and bring it out miles in the future, that I couldn't do that and teaching at the same time. And also I was getting to a point where teaching, I was finding it very stressful. I wasn't enjoying the good parts anymore. And it was getting very on top of me, making me very anxious. We were struggling with balancing the kids because we were both working. So trying to kind of, right, you're doing a school pickup and this one's got a club, and then because I was having to work at home, well, and so was he actually, of being like, okay, well tonight, if I do this, then it just ended up, everything was stressful, everything was a mess. There was no way that I could have self-published a book in amongst all of that. It would have just ended up being little bits of admin during the holidays. So I made the decision to quit my job, and that is in no small part because of reading this book, because it allowed me to let go and not be like, but I have to work, and it allowed me to kind of, my husband say, look, it's all right, we don't need your income, we can manage, and you know, I don't mind if you're pursuing this and trying to make the best of this because I know it's important to you. And it allowed my mind to go, that's okay, I don't have to keep going with the way we've been doing things. I can try something new that I care about, and I can let go of the things that are making life difficult for me. And it was absolutely the right decision. I really want to write books for the rest of my life and have that as my career, but whether financially in the long term that's going to work out or not, I don't know. But in the short term, in terms of our kind of our family life of having 3 young kids and me being around and us being able to juggle things between us, it's worked so well. So yeah, it made a really big difference to me, and I don't think I'd have let go so willingly if I hadn't have read this. I think I would have just been like, but this is what I do, because that was the thing with me. It was like, once something is established, I can't let go of it. So it's like, but that is my job. And for me to say I don't have to do that job is, for me, my brain couldn't do that. So yeah, for me this made a really big difference to lots of things, but that was a really big thing for me and for us. Okay, number 10, which is the trickiest one, I think, and the one I had to really think about, is Stone. Discuss 3 books or series that imprinted on your soul and impacted you in many ways. So I think I'm going to go for a variety here. Again, I'm going to overlook the politics of breastfeeding because, yes, that had a massive impact on me, blah, 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 I've talked about it lots. So I'm going to talk about The Lord of the Rings. These books, I went through a massive phase of reading fantasy after reading these. I read The Hobbit when I was quite young, and then I read The Lord of the Rings when I was maybe 14 or something like that, and I remember being crazy about them and constantly talking to my mum and my stepdad about, oh my god, I've just read this bit, and them going, oh, have you got to this bit, and it just being this really exciting thing. And then not that long after I read them, the films came out, and these books I found so emotional, so beautiful, so creative, and they explained a lot to me as well about the bits of fantasy I had read, where you can see kind of where they get like Tolkien-esque references and things. Just that whole idea as well, because with the appendices and the Silmarillion and all the bits and pieces of that, literally Tolkien knew everything about this world, and I found that so fascinating that he had just completely built this fictional universe. Next ones, these aren't necessarily in any order. I've talked about before the Discworld books because I used to read these with my dad. I'll link the video where I talk about it in more detail. And my dad still loves them. I like some of them. I'm not as big of a fan as he is, but there are some that I particularly love. And again, I mean, I would have read these before I read Tolkien. So I suppose these were my first fantasy books that I liked. But again, the whole idea of the universe, and I think at that age I didn't get into, I didn't get all of the references, but obviously I do, as I got older, I started to understand kind of where it was coming from, and the sort of reflecting real life kind of thing. But these, to me, were, I loved them, I found them very readable, I would read them over and over again, and they were kind of a link to my dad because he lived away, so something that we shared in common and that we could talk about as well, of like, oh, I've just read this one, we still do, of like, oh, I just read this Pratchett, and oh yeah, I've read that one, and it's just, I have very strong connections with these books and my dad. And the last one I'm going to go for, I don't know if it's a bit of a lazy choice, could you call it that, I don't know, is the Harry Potter books. They're upstairs, I'm not going to go and grab them. These came out when I was a teenager, and I didn't get into them. I used to, anything that everybody was into, I didn't want anything to do with. And I remember lots of people reading them, and I was like, oh, I'm not reading that. And then I did read them, and I was mad about them and loved them, and I remember being really excited when the last book came out, of just like, yes, we finally get to find out what happened. I love the Harry Potter world. I just think it's just so so clever and beautiful, and I love the fact that it has darkness within it, and there's so much I love about it, and as I say, I read it sort of as a teenager, and then going into adulthood. My mum read them as well, and she really loved them. My mum and my brother really love the audiobooks. I've listened to the audiobooks loads of times as well, and for all of us it's something we find quite comforting, so at times when I've struggled with sleep, I'll listen to Harry Potter. I think that's a really common thing that people do. I listen to the Stephen Fry ones. My mum and my brother listen to the other ones. I can't remember. Jim, I'll write it below. There is something about it, I guess because we know the stories so well. And then I wanted my son to read Potter, and I read him the first one, well, we sort of read it together, and he found it a bit too much. And we watched the film, and he really didn't like the film. So I left it, and then I was like, look, do you want to try Potter again? He was like, oh no, it was a bit scary, I don't like it. And I was like, seriously, it was because you were young, try it again. And he was like, oh, okay. I said, you can stop any time if you don't like it, just kind of go, no, I'm still not into it, but I promise you, you'll really like it. And he must have read the entire series in about a month, and he constantly rereads them, he loves them so much. And I love the fact, because my husband hasn't really read them, he's seen the films, so it's kind of something between me and my son. So in the same way as Pratchett is between me and my dad, it's like Potter is between me and my son, and so we can talk about bits of it, and oh, did you love that bit, and what did you think about this, and I'm not like a massive Potterhead, but I do really love it, and yeah, it's just nice when you have like those family bonds and those stories around books. There are books other than those series that have had maybe a bigger impact on me in terms of like a self-help kind of a way, but I just thought that those, literary wise, those three, the Potters, the Pratchetts and the Lord of the Rings, that they just, on a literary level, really mattered to me and made me love books and be really into like a particular world and a particular writer and all of that kind of thing. So, and have those links with people who also love them. Sorry if the light is a bit different. I nipped away for the day basically and left the camera set up because I wanted to ask on Facebook on the booktubers group if anyone fancied this tag, and Samantha Amy said that she would like to, and it gave me a new channel to look at. So hi Samantha, and I'm looking forward to seeing her content, including this tag. And I'd also like to tag my old booktube friend Morgan Vega, and also Snow White Reader, who made the most lovely booktube and authortube shout out video, which mentioned me, which was lovely, but it mentioned all these amazing channels. It was really creative and really lovely. I'm going to link that video below because it's just gorgeous, so go and check that out. But equally, anyone watching this, if you fancy doing the tag, just go for it. Please like if you did, please leave me a comment below, subscribe if you would like to for more videos about reading and about writing, and I will see you all for my next one. Bye!